Born on the deep core world of Prakith, the man later known as Darth Andeddu was a powerful Force-sensitive who left his home to train in the dark side on Korriban. A significant figure in their early history, Andeddu earned his place among them sometime after the 100-Year Darkness and reign of the first Sith Lords, studying their work with great dedication, but focusing primarily on the teachings of Karness Moore, who specialized in dark side healing. Eventually, Andeddu grew his abilities and mastered the ritual of essence transfer, originally discovered by Mur, allowing him to detach his consciousness from a physical body and place it in a new host of his choosing, be it a living being or an inanimate object. His knowledge and power eventually allowed him to claim the mantle of Dark Lord, ruling over the Sith Empire of Korriban as Darth Andeddu, the first known usage of the Darth title, with some believing he began the tradition. Yet, unlike his predecessors and peers, Andeddu had no interest in taking apprentices or imparting information, instead growing obsessed with secrecy, hiding all his books, scrolls, and artifacts while refusing to teach or train others, with his core philosophy stating that knowledge is power, and true Sith do not share power. Unfortunately for the Dark Lord, his unyielding attitude made him many enemies, and soon enough his followers were plotting against him, but Andeddu was prepared for such an eventuality and feigned his death, even creating a fake tomb, which fooled the Sith long enough for his escape from the planet. Though his enemies eventually learned the truth and searched for their former Dark Lord, Andeddu was never found, taking refuge on his homeworld of Prakith, where he ruled as an immortal God King. Reigning for centuries, Andeddu continued to study many aspects of the Force, but focused primarily on mental training rather than physical, specializing in Sith sorcery to infiltrate an opponent's mind and cast illusions that appeared so real their bodies reacted as if what they saw was really happening, allowing the Sith Lord to impose his will or kill them if necessary. Though Andeddu remained resolute, he would not impart his greater knowledge upon anyone else. He did teach his descendants the basics of darkside force training and philosophy, forming the Malevolence cult, which faithfully served their master. Despite all he'd achieved, Andeddu only grew more obsessed with secrecy and hiding his knowledge, convinced his enemies were still on the hunt. Therefore, he gathered all his books, scrolls, artifacts, and anything else containing information he valued, and stored it in the hidden lower levels of a mighty fortress to be guarded by his cultists. Among the many treasures he gathered, the most valuable was his personal holocron containing the secret to essence transfer, having learned on Korriban how to impart his knowledge directly into the device, thereby creating a gatekeeper hologram in his image to deliver the information requested. These gatekeepers were reflections of their creators, and had their personalities, meaning they only taught those they deemed worthy. Yet even with all these precautions, Andeddu was convinced he was still too vulnerable, and so devised a plan to ensure he could never be captured, and his knowledge would forever remain hidden, by voluntarily ending his physical existence, entombing himself alive within the fortress, surrounded by his books and artifacts. Having long ago mastered the ability to detach his consciousness from his body, he lived on in a spirit-like form, but instead of choosing a living being as his next host, he placed his consciousness into his personal holocron after conducting a ritual to ensure his physical form could be revived by placing the holocron on his body's chest. This would then drain the life force of the person holding the device and use the energy to reanimate the corpse with his consciousness intact. Ordering the cultists to guard his tomb until the day he returned, the life of Darth Andeddu passed into legend until the year 4400 BBY, 600 years after the collapse of the old Sith Empire he once ruled, when the former Jedi-turned-Sith Lord Freefolk found the holocron of Darth Andeddu, and from it learned the secret of essence transfer. A legendary figure in his own right, Freefolk was trained by both Jedi and Sith to become one of the most powerful Sith Lords in their history, eventually choosing to rule as king of the planet Onderon, imparting dark side values upon their people, laws, and culture. Reigning for over a century, he was eventually discovered by the Jedi Order, who sent an army and ended his life. Yet thanks to the teachings of Darth Andeddu, Freefolk was able to detach his consciousness from his corpse and continue to rule over Onderon for centuries, inhabiting the bodies of his descendants to impose his will, awaiting the day he found a suitable candidate to become a more permanent host. Many years later, following the victory of the light side in the new Sith Wars of 2000 to 1000 BBY, the Jedi Council of First Knowledge set about collecting Sith artifacts and suppressing all knowledge of their existence, paying special attention to the legacy of Darth Andeddu, deeming his teachings so dangerous they needed to eradicate all mention of him from galactic history. Though they largely succeeded, a few shreds of information survived, allowing the last remaining Sith Lord, Darth Bane, to track down a scroll mentioning Andeddu as the immortal God King of Prakith, thereby giving him a location to search for more information about this long-dead master. Arriving on Prakith, Bane defeated the Malevolence cultists, which still roamed the ruined fortress, and took the holocron in the hopes of learning the secret to essence transfer and immortal life. Yet Bane was impatient and not yet deemed worthy by the Andeddu gatekeeper, making him so angry he used his own immense powers to forcefully extract the information he needed from the holocron. Though Bane learned the ritual, and nearing his death was able to detach his consciousness from his body, he was ultimately unable to take control over the host body he chose, as it belonged to Darth Zana, his powerful apprentice who fought back and defeated her master in a battle of the mind. Yet Zana did not inherit the Andeddu holocron, also known as the Holocron of Heresies, as it was stolen by the Dark Jedi Set Hearth, who unlike Bane, was a patient, respectful student for the Gatekeeper, and thus was taught everything he needed to know about essence transfer, allowing him to live as a wealthy adventurer for the next 1,000 years. By 21 BBY, the holocron was no longer in Set's possession, and was instead found on Korriban by the Darkside apprentice Quinlan Voss, and given to his master Darth Tyrannus, who himself was apprenticed to Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith. Opening the top, Tyrannus, also known as Count Dooku, found the red lightsaber crystal of Darth Andeddu and gave it to Voss as a gift, while keeping the holocron for himself. The legacy of Andeddu then continued to live on, when a century later, in 137 ABY, the Dark Lord Darth Krayt ruled over a great galactic empire, while suffering from a terrible affliction that threatened his life. Seeking a way to heal himself, Krayt consulted with the holocrons of Darths Andeddu, Nihilus, and Bane, but found them scornful of his Sith Order, decrying it as a pathetic shell of what they once were, claiming he shared his power with too many followers and would never be a true Sith. Andeddu even attacked Krayt and nearly killed him, but he was able to shut them off in time. Seeing his master nearing the end, the powerful Sith Lord Darth Warlock set about finding a way to heal this affliction, once again consulting with the Andeddu holocron. At first it refused to help, but when Warlock mentioned that he knew something of Andeddu's history on Prakith, the Gatekeeper challenged him to seek out his tomb in exchange for the information he sought. Heading into the deep core, Warlock defeated the last of the Malevolence cultists, save for one which accepted defeat and offered to serve. The Sith Lord then found Andeddu's corpse, but knew full well this was likely a trap, and refused to place the holocron on the body's chest as instructed, instead planning to simply steal the books and artifacts he found. Seeing his chance for vengeance, the last cultist stole the holocron, and placed it where the Gatekeeper mentioned, thus activating the ancient ritual, which drained him of life energy, reanimated the corpse of Andeddu, and returned the Dark Lord's consciousness to his body. Fighting a final battle, Andeddu was shocked to learn just how powerful his opponent was, with Warlock able to reverse the use of sorcery, making the ancient Sith believe he and all his knowledge was being burned in a great fire, thereby triggering his greatest fear that he might die a final death and lose all the knowledge he gathered. Yet while the horror of seeing this killed Andeddu for a final time, it was only an illusion, with all his books and artifacts surviving without issue. Placing Andeddu's corpse back in his tomb, Warlock looked through the information but found nothing useful, and so took a handful of items and went on his way. Thus ended the legendary life of Darth Andeddu, former Dark Lord of the Sith and immortal God King of Prakith. Having bested Andeddu, Darth Warlock was not impressed with the ancient master, and even accused him of cowardice, as he hid from his enemies rather than face them. Yet this assessment could not take away from the incredible legacy he left behind, as Darth Andeddu survived in some form or another for over 5,000 years, with his teachings influencing some of the most powerful Sith to ever live. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Kristen Greeneyes of the Company of the Cat, Barachado, Thomas the Kinslayer, and Sir Willem the Dawn Treader. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and click on the links below, or else go to patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.